Coming up, with all the trade rumors swirling around the Brooklyn Nets, what of Ben Simmons, his role in recent weeks, and the long-term future for that $40 million once upon a time star? We dive in coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, it's my friends. It is the Locked On Nets podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And Doug, a pause from all of the speculation and conversation around how many veterans are going to be traded off this team, to remind everyone that there's a veteran on this team that is not likely to be traded anywhere. And that's one Ben Simmons, who has seen his role devolve maybe a little bit as the season has progressed.
Yeah, we could start to be seeing the writing on the wall here with Simmons, who's moved to the bench, with Claxton getting back into the starting lineup. The role's been, not like completely reduced, but pretty significantly reduced. 12 minutes, 21 minutes, 18 minutes over the last 3 games. Has taken 4 shots in that 51-minute stretch, right? So, which is like just like a shocking number when you look at it. Like when you watch him play, but then he's kind of not shooting, and then you see it in the aggregate, and you're like, wow, he really just didn't shoot at all. 4 shots in 51 minutes. But this sort of role reduction coupled with some, so probably engagement farming, but whatever news about a certain, bookmaker coming out and giving relative odds around where Ben Simmons' next landing spot could be, either trade, very unlikely, or a buyout. Possibly likely, we'll see. I mean, I'm not sure, but and that was with the Celtics, which I always find funny. There's no way that the Celtics can't trade for him. So I just want to jump out ahead of that. Even if they wanted to, they can't. There's no money that works. And so overall, I do wonder if this is sort of like the beginning of the end of Simmons's time with the Nets, such as it were, kind of already understanding that this was probably going to be the last season anyway.
Yeah, there wasn't a high expectation that there was going to move beyond this. I do think it's funny that when you won, as you pointed out, you see bookmaker odds talking about a trade that cannot happen. It is impossible for it to occur with that particular team in the Boston Celtics financially and for all those other reasons.
By the way, I'm pretty sure on that. I'm just real quick. I just interrupt you for 1 second. I'm just going to say, I'm going to caveat this by saying I tried this with a bunch. I tried to do it as a joke, like just putting in Tatum, Jaylen Brown, because I was like, oh, this will be funny. I'll just post this. But every single time I tried this, even with like guys who they would never trade, it was rejected, and the Celtics can't aggregate money. So
that's the biggest, the biggest holdup there for the Boston Celtics. Even in the scenario where they were trying to make this happen, because of the restrictions around not being able to cobble together salaries, makes it a near impossibility, if not fully impossible. Okay, fine. Then you get into the buyout of it all, but it is funny that simultaneously there's also like the buzzing rumors that the Brooklyn Nets are possibly interested in trying to trade for, Giannis, whether it's right now, whether it's down the line. And we talked about this in the offseason too. And you remember in the offseason, it was, don't forget, Giannis said one of his favorite players to play with in the league is Ben Simmons. You're like, oh, here we go. This is the connection you've been waiting for. So it almost just feels completely unsurprising that when you talk about Ben Simmons, this is the landscape. He's going to get traded. Boston Celtics championship team are interested. The Nets are just going to flat buy him out. Maybe the Nets are going to keep him because he'd be a critical piece to keeping a superstar that they want to bring in happy. And then you go to the stats, as you mentioned, and it just, when Jordi Fernandez came in and talked about what he wanted to see from Ben Simmons and the expectations he wanted to set, there were flashes of it in some of those early moments in the season. But when we're wrong, we always acknowledge it. When we feel like we're right on something, it doesn't hurt to give a pat on the back. We said all along, if Nicholas Claxton had started the season healthy, I think it would have been a very different discussion. It would have looked very different from game one. And now as he has gotten progressively healthier and more integrated into the role, Ben Simmons is fading. And he hasn't been doing the thing that Jordi Fernandez clearly wanted him to do, which was shoot more. And Jordi Fernandez has given every indication as a head coach, if you're not doing what I ask you to do, it's going to be a problem when it comes to you getting on the court.
Yeah, he's just had a wild season. Like, it's, again, when you go to say about the Jordi Fernandez thing, it's like when you look at Simmons' numbers, and it really hasn't been a disaster. I will say this, like, for as low as the usage has been, it's kind of a miracle that it hasn't been so bad. I mean, the Nets have shot pretty well around him. He has the passing is still, I would say, totally elite, right? And so it's just he just can't couple it with these other things. And he's just got, like, again, some wild stats, right? On the one hand, they have been better with him on the court this year, right? Right around break even net rating with him on, -6 with him off. So you're like, okay, it's been fine with him on, right? Good enough. And it's been worse with him off. I mean, you would take that really from him. I think going into the season. Then when you look at the vast discrepancy between the thing he does well and the thing he doesn't do at all is kind of wild. Because if you sort by assist percentage for players that play over 23 minutes. So like anyone with, he's 23.6. He sits ninth overall in assist percentage. And the guys above him are Trey, Ja, LeBron, Cade, Jokic, Chris Paul, Harden, LaMelo, Simmons. Like that's so the assist rate is among the very, very assist percentage is among the very, very best in the league. Then you sort by usage. All right. And he's like the 9th worst guy in the league, 9th lowest guy in usage. And all the other guys above him are either just like kind of just like 3-and-D sort of just cardio dudes like Haywood Highsmith, Javonte Green, or bigs like Rudy Gobert, right? Like it's also, or WCJ. It's like guys like this, or it's mostly cardio 3-and-D wings like KCP and dudes like this, where it's like, hey, your role is to kind of just get up and down the court. If a corner three kind of lands in your lap, take it. Otherwise, like let's just not have you doing all that much. But Simmons is a guy who can ball a lot, so it's just like a wild stat line, I think. And it plays into all the things that it's again, everyone that still likes Ben Simmons is going to point to the first thing I said, rightfully, say, hey, it's like unlocking shooters and doing all this stuff. And the people that don't like him are going to point to the second thing and say, yeah, but he just never does this other thing. It's just crazy. It's just so funny how confirmation bias sometimes plays out this way.
Oh yeah, and by the way, it's like we're a little bit, it's a victim of it. Even though we can acknowledge the things that he's doing well, it is also what we've said. We think this is the problem, and we haven't seen that problem be reduced or changed in any way. Coming up here in a second, a big reason actually why having him make the team better when he's on the court is still a problem if you are the Brooklyn Nets for many reasons. Plus, what does it look like when we think about the buyout possibility and the long-term future for the Nets over the course of the season? We'll do that here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at Gametime. Look, there's no better thing than going to a live sporting event, right? Whether it's the Nets game, if you want to go to, maybe you still want to get in on the NFL action, hockey. We all know hockey is just one of the best there is live. Gametime has you covered. Whether it's for the sporting event, whether it's for the concert, the comedy show, the theater, whatever it is, Gametime Picks is going to make getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier if you go to Gametime right now. Monday, December 16th, Cavs visit the Nets. I said this the other day, and I was shocked. Starting at $5. Starting at $5 over on Gametime. It bumps up a little bit when it's Jazz at Nets, and you're like, well, why would that start at $35? City Edition beanie night. There you go. City Edition. Watch two tanking teams, but grab a City Edition beanie and know you're coming out with the W. Like I said, Gametime Picks has made this so easy. You're gonna get the super deals, the curated deals. You're gonna see the seats before you see what you're gonna see from the seats before you even buy. Lowest price guarantee, event cancellation. It's all there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about Ben Simmons and his status currently with the Brooklyn Nets. Sidebar, though, for a minute. Talk about the upcoming draft next season, how important it is for the Brooklyn Nets. Yours truly is going to be at MSG, checking out UConn Gonzaga, Saturday night special. There's a lot of guys to check out there, mostly on UConn side. Liam McNeely, 17th overall right now on the big board per Tankathon. So I'm going to do a little bit of scouting. Come in next week, Monday, maybe Tuesday. Talk about some college players that are in the teens, because that's maybe where the Brooklyn Nets are going to be picking when it comes to the draft next year. On Ben Simmons, you mentioned the numbers about them being better with him on the court than off the court, and even beyond winning or losing games this season. The problem with that is you also, as we've always known, can't play him down the stretch of games. So as valuable as he can be in facilitating and setting up others, if the premise is always, but then when we get down the stretch of a ball game and he's been doing a good job in his minutes, getting good looks for other teammates, can't play him because he can't shoot. And because he can't shoot free throws either, and is unwilling to do that. You mentioned the stat around him and the shot selection. It shouldn't come as any surprise that from a free throw perspective, he's taken 4 free throws going back to, hold your breath, wait for it. Yes, I can get all the way back to October 25th. Yep. 4 free throws taken since October 25th. So everyone knows this, but it just, for me and for our perspective, crystallizes what the problem is. Yes, you're an amazing facilitator, but not only do you not shoot, not only are you one of the bigs on the floor for the Brooklyn Nets, you also don't go and attack at the basket when those opportunities present themselves. So it's not to drag Ben Simmons. I do think it's been better than I expected it to be coming into this year. And also, it's nothing that you're going to be concerned about losing or not playing as much. And nothing that Jordi Fernandez has looked at and said, oh, we can get this player to point X. I expected actually, I wonder if you agree, to continue to fade here, whether we talk about buyout or not, because Noah to come back. And Day'Ron Sharpe has been in the mix. And Nicholas Claxton is there. Like, you start to have more and more bodies that occupy front court space. Doesn't solve facilitation issues in the backcourt, but it just feels like the minutes are only going to get whittled down here even further if he's not going to change course, which we wouldn't expect him to.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to see more of, right? I think Fernandez was clear early on, kind of called it out publicly and said, yeah, he has to do this. You know, he mentioned just like has to shoot. They want him to do it. They want him to get to the basket.
And he, by the way, quickly said, we're a better team when he's on the floor. He helps us push the pace. Like, he acknowledged the things that Ben Simmons helps make them better at while saying, I need more of X, Y, and Z.
But I wonder too, if like, you know, we've seen from Jordi, right? Like, he's clearly, like sort of he's a high level coach. Like, there's things he seems like he demands, and it seems like most guys on the team are bought into it. So if you kind of come out publicly and say, hey, look, if you want to stay on the court and keep playing, like, this is the thing that you have to do. We have to see this from you. And if it's said very, you know, succinctly and clearly, and it's just like, those are the things that aren't happening. I think when you combine that with, we know that like maybe the Claxton Simmons fit isn't really super clean, which is, you know, a nice, really pretty nice way to put that. Once you figure that out and you know that Claxton's back fully healthy and, you know, is able to play bigger minutes, well then, yeah, you start seeing the 12 minutes, 21 minutes, 18 minutes over the last 3 games. Yeah, he's still like, you know, operating basically as the 6th man. I'm pretty sure he's been in the first rotation each time over those last 3 games. I'll just double check that while I talk. But overall, like, if this is, I do think this is like writing on the wall. And you know, if the team were, like you said, were to get healthier, if the Day'Ron's back in the mix here, it wants to get Clowney back, I just think the minutes continue to just kind of tick downward. I just don't, or maybe they just stay in this range, right? This is like 18 to 19 minute range. He's off the bench. Yeah, he was 6 man. So like, I just wonder if this is what it's going to be. And we already had said early on that, you know, all off season when we heard, oh, Ben Simmons is, which I still laugh about. I was on my walk this morning and I made a note to like not use my time wisely here, but to go back and find all the people that said that Simmons's contract is a value because it's expiring. And we just always push back about like the definition of value is just like not being that really. But so, and I was like, this is not going to be a good positive use of my time, but I'm still going to do it just in case anyone deletes these things past the trade deadline. Overall, though, I think what we're seeing though is like if there's a major role reduction here, combined with the salary being just so enormous, I just don't see how there's a path, right, to like even taking it back as like an attachment to something else, unless you went big game hunting. And even then you'd have to attach even more to kind of make it like worth it.
Yeah, the only scenario I could see is, you just mentioned at the end there, if the Brooklyn Nets were making a hard pivot here at the deadline and saying, we want superstar X, right? Whatever team.
But they're not going to do that. They're not going to do
I know they're not. Yeah, I know. That's my point being is, you know, they're not going to make this move. If they heard that, if all of a sudden Giannis said, oh my God, I can't believe it. Even though we got this thing back on track, I still don't like it. I'm not going to be here long term. I want out. Great. And we're going to throw you all these picks. The hard push, quote unquote, from the Brooklyn Nets would be like, we can salary match. It's going to be with Ben Simmons. You got to deal with that. You know, like that's what it looks like in order to make this deal happen. And they're not going to do that. The interesting thing for me would be somewhat around what's going on with the rest of this team. You know, is Cam Johnson going to get traded? We're going to touch back into trade stuff more specifically tomorrow on the podcast. But even when we talk about yesterday with Dennis Schroeder, if you move him out, I don't think it changes it dramatically because we say Jordi Fernandez sets a standard of what he wants from positions and how he wants the team to play. So I don't think that if Dennis Schroeder is gone, that Jordi Fernandez would automatically say, okay, Ben Simmons, ball handler, like we need it. And so you're going to get bumped back up to almost 30 minutes a game. I think that is on the table, but it might be more likely that Keon Johnson gets an opportunity. It might be more likely that when Cam Thomas comes back, right? So I am curious about that side of it. If the Nets move off of some of their other veterans, does Ben Simmons end up just being the guy that they allow to be a part of this team in the rotation? Or does the conversation start to go towards the buyout version of this, and whether or not at a certain point, if you're willing to move on from veteran players this year that are clearly valuable to the team because it may be hurting your draft stock, you also have to be willing to move on from a player that is not functioning the way you need him to within your system. Because I think it's sending messages to the rest of the team, right? If you're working hard, you're putting it in, you deserve to play. So what's the value in keeping Ben Simmons on the bench? Unlike these other veterans, I haven't heard, and it's not to knock him, but I haven't heard that he's been an invaluable resource to some of the younger players on the team. You've heard that about Schroeder. You've heard that about Johnson. I don't see that same, narrative being built around Ben Simmons so much as he's probably a guy that still feels like he's that top tier player. All these guys always do. They're always the last to realize that they are not the player they think they are anymore. And I wonder if that's still a hard hurdle for him to get over when it comes to watching the way his minutes go and watching the way he has devolved on this team.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't heard any of that. I think that all things being equal, he's been an upstanding citizen here. I think he gets along with everyone. We've never heard otherwise. There's never been any complaining. I think that from that standpoint,
he's not disgruntled, but he's a little gruntled, right? I mean,
I don't even know if he's gruntled. We haven't even heard that. He doesn't seem I would give credit to him on this. I don't think that there's even been any of that. He gets paid a lot. Sure. The role's been reduced. It doesn't seem to be any moping. He's had some great looks against Milwaukee. I don't think it's a hard, he's in a tough place with this, right? There's been a major fall from grace here. I think all things considered, he's probably handled that part of it pretty well. I think we've joked in times that the Instagram stuff over in the offseason seems a little out of touch around what the on court, what the rest of it ends up being, but whatever. I mean, I don't make $40 million a year as an NBA superstar either, so I can't tell you how in touch I would be if I had those. Right. I suspect I would be moderately out of touch. When certain things in my life go up, I get a little out of touch around how I'm going to interact with other people. So I really don't even begrudge that part of it. It's more just funny, and it's just funny to talk about. But overall, it's not a bad thing. So I don't think we're going to see a situation where he pouts his way out of here or complains his way out of here. I don't think there's going to be any of that. I think it's probably going to be just a realistic look at what the potential buyout market is. And if he thinks he can land on an actual good team and that a team wants him, I think we maybe see that. I do not, but I don't think and I think trade. I do wonder too, if there's a part of him that's hey, I just need to be on my best behavior here. He's not he's ever misbehaved, but I'm best behavior here because I'm in a contract year and I'm not sure when that next paycheck is coming, right? There's a couple different factors here.
And that's, I think, coming up here in a second. What is the ultimate outcome for the Brooklyn Nets for Ben Simmons? And can we see him potentially not on the Brooklyn Nets this year, not via trade, but also find himself on another roster, potentially one that has an opportunity for playoff basketball? We'll do that to close things out here in just one moment.
Before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. No better time to get in on the NFL or NBA actually with the FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, customers can bet $5. You can get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 real money bet. Look, FanDuel's got everything. You got you completely covered on the whole betting spectrum, right? You got the in-game stuff, you get the live stuff, you get the parlays, you got just all the different props, more props you could ever sort through really on any given night, much less the rest of your life. You could be in this, just going on this for hours. If you go over there on FanDuel right now, Nets plus 10.5 against the Grizzlies coming up here on Friday. I need to remind you, Nets one of the very best teams in the league against the spread this season, right? Just this is what happens when you just exceed expectations on a nightly basis. That's what the Nets are doing. You can take advantage over at our friends on FanDuel. Grab $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 real money bet over on FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, another reminder for you, go ahead and check out the daily newsletter on LockedOnDaily.com. Starting to go ahead and give a preview of our upcoming episode, maybe a little more details and information about Dennis Schroeder and his stats for the season before we talk about the possibility of where he could be traded to. So check that out at your leisure. I say do it in the morning sometimes. I say do it in the evening. Do it at supper time. I think that was about
you say leisure?
But nevertheless.
Is that how you usually say it? Was that just a play? Did you usually say leisure, or are you just saying that to kind of be funny, or is that how you say that?
Oh no. Am I saying at my leisure incorrectly on purpose? Yes.
Leisure instead of leisure. That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha.
We're fine.
I was curious. I was actually confused I was like, which one is it? I'm not sure how many times I've actually heard.
I think if you're
I
British,
say
you
leisure.
leisure. Like if you're British, that's one of those ones. Across the pond, it's leisure. But here in the States, we say at my leisure. So for your pleasure, that's how that word gets said too.
That's a good one. Hey, that was good job by you. Good job by you on that one. That was really that was a very high level, actually. That was Come on now. For you to pull that out in the moment, I'm actually very impressed with that. Okay, keep going.
Do we think? Well, we'll circle back to that later. Do we think that ultimately there is an opportunity here for Ben Simmons? Because I think you brought up the good point there at the end of the last segment. Being on his best behavior, he's in a contract year. If he still wants to be playing, if he thinks there's another opportunity out there for him after the Brooklyn Nets this season, you're not going to sit here and be disgruntled, especially when you are not the player you once were. Okay, great. One, I think it is possible the Brooklyn Nets would entertain a buyout at some point, simply because it doesn't hurt to pay the money this year when you're going towards the tank. It's not like other seasons when you need that financial flexibility. I wonder if other teams would any interest, veteran minimum Ben Simmons, would another team look at it and go, oh, we'll stick him on our bench. We'll bring him in for 18 to 20 minutes and we'll let it rip. We'll let him facilitate like he's been doing for the Brooklyn Nets, because that still does look great, right? We'll let him pick up some high-level defensive assignments and be a bit of a pest on that end of the floor. Great. Like, I do think that there will be interested teams if it's just Ben Simmons on the open market for a low-cost rental the rest of the season.
Yeah, I just can't. It's just so hard to see it happening. Like, I just don't, you know what I mean? Like, do you think it's realistic?
Percentage-wise, I'd say 30. If released by the Brooklyn Nets, if bought out by the Brooklyn Nets, I'd say 35% chance that a team takes a flyer on him for the remainder of the season.
So here's why I'll push back on this. I actually think he only gets bought out if he knows he has a landing spot. Because the thing is, remember, with a buyout, like a buyout means you're taking less money. Like the buyout only happens if you agree to like, I'm going to buy out for X percentage less than what the contract should have been. And there's no incentive. So I would say if he's bought out, there's a 100% chance he lands with the team. Like, because they already know, because they already know about it ahead of time. Like, so, but this percentage is still, I would still use your percentage as the correct one, because it's like, I'm only just getting we're just order of operations being different, right? It's like he only gets bought out if he knows it, then it's 100%. But if we're just talking about like the chance of it happening, then like, it's still a low percentage, because I'm just not sure. Because his buyout, I think to like sign like mid-level exception, like he still needs to sign like a decent. Your team just can't get him at a total minimum. Like, I'm pretty sure he's an MLE guy, even coming on a buyout. So I don't think it's like this like free roll for any team to be able to do it either.
No, and so there would be a financial factor there as well. And I think maybe for me, if I was in Ben Simmons' shoes, because to your point, well, I need to know that I have a landing spot, because I can't take a buyout and then just not play the rest of the year. At least if I'm in Brooklyn, I'm on the court, I'm performing, I'm showing that I can still play basketball. But the other part of it is whether or not, because right now, like, we're having the conversation. Ben Simmons' role is being reduced on a team that is not trying to, in the end, is not trying to win basketball games. He's being reduced to a bench player on a non-competitive, in the big picture, NBA
way
team.
To look at that.
The other side of it is he's like, maybe like, dude, buy me out, because I need to go somewhere else, even for less money, just from the money of it. Like, I got to go somewhere else that is competing and show that I can be a part of a competitive basketball team. Because right now, these stats maybe from around the league are going, okay, great, you're doing it for the Brooklyn Nets. Like, what does that mean in 2024, 25?
Well,
so
you make
I
a
wonder
great
if that's
point.
part of his thinking on this.
Yeah. You make a great point, which I hadn't even really thought about, is that like,
I'm crushing it.
It's one thing to get
segment, I'm crushing it.
It's one thing to get 18 minutes on the Celtics.
Yes.
It's another thing to get 18 minutes off the bench on the Nets. And if you can't earn 26 minutes, 28 minutes a game on the Nets right in their current form, then like, what is the reality here? And it's not like it's like not deserving. So this is the other interesting thing. It's like, he might have to go prove it somewhere else, but he's having trouble getting minutes here where there's very little competition.
Yeah.
Right. There's, who's the competition here? And so that's the other probably concerning thing, is that like, it's not like these minutes would be super robust in other situations that with these teams that have, maybe considerably more talent. I think that, theoretically, this is the best chance for him to shine. and that chance is slowly or maybe rapidly now being whittled away. And because like where's he going to go that has less talent? Or like more chances to play. I don't even think that place doesn't exist.
And at that point, I mean, I don't know. Let's close out on this. What is the future for Ben Simmons? Like the contract is winding down. He's on the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets are not bringing him back. Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way here. Well, if there isn't a market for him to say, hey, we should work on a buyout because I can go play somewhere else down the stretch here, it's actually going to be really, I know fans don't think about things this way. On a human level, it's going to be pretty sad next off season when the conversation is like whether or not Ben Simmons is going to get a look by a team to try to fit in. Like, I do wonder where he is in the hierarchy of NBA players. The money, obviously, we always talk about how that's such a big factor in the way we perceive guys, but where is he? Is he going to sign a vet minimum deal to go somewhere next season and prove himself? I don't know if his ego, as all high-level NBA players do, I don't know if his ego affords him to do that, or I don't know if he's the type of veteran that says, I want to chase a ring. You know, that's a goal of mine. We've seen plenty of older NBA players that were once superstars do that later in their careers. He's not even like totally late in his career, quote unquote. It's just all the injuries and everything that's happened with him makes it feel like it's been a very long time since he was looked at as that type of caliber player.
All right, so let's say future cast us a little bit here. What is the thing that happens? I think the range of outcomes is pretty wide.
Yes.
If I were to guess right now, is that this season plays out with him on the Nets and the contract expires. That's one. I think that he sticks it out here. I don't think he gets traded, and I don't think there's a buyout. I've said this from the beginning, and I'm sticking to it. I'll stick to this till it happens. So and I'll come back and be wrong. That's fine. But we've been adamant on this thing that I never thought a trade was even close to realistic, and I don't even think the buyout is all that realistic. So I'm going to start there. After that, my guess is we hear something like Ben Simmons is stepping away from basketball for a year. That's the announcement after this year. He's stepping away from basketball for a year. And then we hear that he's like going to prep to play for like the Australian national team or something like that. Like he's going to step away and he's going to plan to play with the Australian national team because he's signaled in the past that he wants to do that. And that's like sort of the talking point. And he's going to get right, or he's going to do something. And he does not play to start the year. And then we'll see what happens. But that's right now, December 12th, 8:30 a.m. That's my prediction. I don't think it's like, more than 30%, but I think that's the most likely outcome of all the choices, right? Because I think we go like 30%, 25%, 20. Like we
Right.
put all these little different things together. But if I had to pick one of them, that's where I think that's my guess.
Yeah, and I think that's the one that I would fall to as the most likely, a slow, quiet fade at the end of the season, and then a reassessment of where he is in the offseason, which is a bummer, man. Because I know that we have been some of the leaders of highlighting why Ben Simmons is not functioning well for the Brooklyn Nets and not a good basketball player in totality for what he brings to the court. Like, and we say it every time. I want Ben Simmons to be good. I want Ben Simmons to be great. I want it to be real when they say, my God, should they hold on to Ben Simmons because Giannis may be interested? I want it to actually matter how Ben Simmons plays and how it relates to the Brooklyn Nets and to the NBA. But at this point, it looks like we'll be talking about the possibility of what his career looks like rather than where he's going to be playing. So that's the Ben Simmons conversation, man. Which, by the way, always a fun one. Always a pleasure.
Oh, dude. Obviously. Okay, we're going to get out of here. We're going to talk a little more of this Golden State trade talk that's kind of cropped up here over the last couple of days. Is like the possibility that Golden State might be open for business with the Nets, and that's gaining a little bit of traction. Maybe things get done sooner than later. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe over on Locked On Nets. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast.
It's official, old buddy. I'm a has-been, and that is Rick Dalton from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
One of the that's great, good one. One of the all-time great poets. We're back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. Yeah.